My name is Elena Vasquez, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, I've been the family disappointment, the sister who couldn't measure up, the one who always fell short of expectations. My older sister Carmen has made sure I never forget it. She's called me worthless so many times that I started believing it myself. But last Tuesday, when her boss introduced me as the new CEO of Henderson Global Solutions, the look on Carmen's face was worth every cruel word she'd ever spoken to me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in the Vasquez household meant living in Carmen's shadow from the moment I could walk. She was 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and according to everyone around us, 3 times smarter. Carmen excelled at everything she touched, from academics to athletics to social situations. She was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the afterthought who could do nothing right. Our parents, Maria and Roberto Vasquez, owned a small restaurant in downtown Phoenix called Casa Esperanza. They had immigrated from Guatemala in their 20s, worked 16-hour days to build something from nothing, and expected their daughters to honor that sacrifice with excellence. Carmen delivered on those expectations effortlessly. She graduated valedictorian from Mesa High School, earned a full scholarship to Arizona State University, and landed a prestigious internship at a major consulting firm before most people her age had even declared a major. I, on the other hand, struggled with everything. School felt like navigating a foreign language, even though English was my first language alongside Spanish. Numbers jumbled together in math class, words seemed to rearrange themselves when I tried to read aloud, and no matter how hard I studied, my grades hovered around average. While Carmen collected academic awards and scholarship offers, I collected disappointed sighs from teachers and concerned phone calls home to my parents. The comparison was constant and relentless. At family dinners, Carmen would regale everyone with stories of her latest achievements, while I pushed food around my plate and tried to become invisible. "Elena could learn something from you," my father would say to Carmen, not realizing how those words cut through me like broken glass. "Maybe if she applied herself half as much as you do, she might actually accomplish something worthwhile." Carmen never missed an opportunity to remind me of my failures. When I struggled with algebra, she would shake her head and mutter about how embarrassing it was to have a sister who couldn't handle basic math. When I didn't make the volleyball team, she pointed out that athletics had always come naturally to people with real determination. When my high school guidance counselor suggested community college might be a better fit than a 4-year university, Carmen was the first to agree, saying it was probably for the best since I clearly wasn't cut out for real academic rigor. The worst part wasn't the constant criticism from my family. It was how I began to internalize their assessment of my worth. By the time I turned 16, I genuinely believed I was less intelligent, less capable, and less deserving of success than my sister. I stopped trying as hard in school because what was the point of struggling for mediocre results when Carmen achieved excellence without breaking a sweat? I avoided applying for leadership positions or challenging opportunities because I knew I would just disappoint everyone involved, especially myself. After high school, I enrolled at Phoenix Community College to study business administration, a decision that prompted more eye-rolling from Carmen and resigned acceptance from my parents. "At least she's doing something," I heard my mother tell a neighbor, the faint praise somehow more painful than outright criticism. Carmen, meanwhile, was completing her MBA at Northwestern University and already fielding job offers from Fortune 500 companies. Community college was actually where I first discovered something I was genuinely good at, though it took me a while to recognize it. In my business communications class, we had to create marketing presentations for fictional companies. While other students focused on flashy graphics and impressive statistics, I found myself drawn to understanding what made people tick, what motivated their purchasing decisions, what emotional triggers drove consumer behavior. My professor, Dr. Janet Kim, was the first person who ever told me I had real talent for something. After I presented a campaign for a sustainable clothing brand that focused on storytelling rather than traditional advertising metrics, she asked me to stay after class. "Elena," she said, You have an intuitive understanding of human psychology that most marketing executives spend years trying to develop. Have you considered pursuing this more seriously?" Her words planted a seed that would take years to fully bloom, but they were the first positive feedback about my abilities that I had ever received. For the first time in my life, someone saw potential in me that went beyond basic competence. Dr. Kim encouraged me to transfer to a 4-year university to complete my degree in marketing, and she even helped me craft a transfer application that highlighted my unique strengths rather than my academic weaknesses. When I told my family about my plans to transfer to Arizona State University, the response was predictably mixed. My parents were cautiously supportive, though they made it clear that they expected me to finally start living up to Carmen's example. Carmen herself was less enthusiastic. "ASU isn't exactly Northwestern," she said with a dismissive shrug, "but I suppose it's better than staying at community college forever. Just try not to embarrass the family name while you're there." University life was challenging in ways I hadn't expected. The coursework was more demanding than anything I had encountered before, and I found myself struggling to keep up with classmates who seemed to grasp complex marketing theories with ease. There were nights when I seriously considered dropping out, convinced that Carmen had been right all along about my limitations. But something Dr. Kim had said kept echoing in my mind. I had an intuitive understanding of human psychology that couldn't be taught from textbooks. I started approaching my studies differently, focusing less on memorizing marketing formulas and more on understanding the human stories behind consumer behavior. When we studied brand loyalty, I didn't just learn about repeat purchase rates. I researched why certain brands became part of people's identities. When we analyzed advertising campaigns, I looked beyond click-through rates to examine how messaging connected with audiences on an emotional level. This approach led to my first real academic success. In my consumer psychology class, we had to develop a comprehensive marketing strategy for a struggling local business. While most students chose restaurants or retail stores, I selected a small nonprofit that provided job training for formerly incarcerated individuals. The organization was amazing but terrible at communicating their impact to potential donors and volunteers. I spent weeks interviewing program participants, understanding their journeys from incarceration to employment, learning about the barriers they faced and the victories they achieved. Instead of creating a traditional marketing campaign focused on statistics about recidivism rates, I built a storytelling strategy that highlighted individual transformation stories. The campaign I developed showed how investing in second chances created ripple effects throughout families and communities. My professor was so impressed with the project that she encouraged me to present it to the nonprofit's board of directors. The presentation led to the organization implementing my strategy, which resulted in a 40% increase in donations over the following 6 months. More importantly, it gave me confidence.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
That I had found my calling in understanding and connecting with people through strategic communication. Carmen's reaction to my academic turnaround was characteristically dismissive. "It's about time you found something you're decent at," she said when I excitedly shared news of my project's success. "Though working with nonprofits isn't exactly a lucrative career path. I hope you're not planning to waste your degree on charity work when you could be making real money in corporate consulting like I am." By this time, Carmen had graduated from Northwestern and landed a position as a junior consultant at Henderson Global Solutions, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the Southwest. She moved back to Phoenix and rented a sleek downtown apartment that she loved showing off to family and friends. Her starting salary was more than our parents had ever made combined, and she never let anyone forget it. During family gatherings, Carmen would regale us with stories from her glamorous consulting life. She traveled to different cities every week, stayed in expensive hotels, dined with C-suite executives, and worked on projects that affected major business decisions. "This week I'm flying to Denver to help a mining company restructure their operations," she would announce over Sunday dinner. "Next month I'll be in Seattle working with a tech startup on their growth strategy." It's exhausting, but incredibly fulfilling to know that my recommendations are shaping the future of these companies. Meanwhile, I was finishing my senior year at ASU, and working part-time at a small digital marketing agency called Bright Spark Creative. The agency specialized in helping small businesses and startups develop their brand identity and online presence. The work was challenging and rewarding, but it definitely wasn't glamorous. I spent my days creating social media campaigns for local restaurants, writing website copy for struggling retailers, and developing email marketing strategies for service providers. Carmen never missed an opportunity to contrast our career trajectories. Elena's doing some kind of social media work for small businesses. She would explain to relatives who asked about my job, the tone of her voice making it clear that she considered my work beneath serious consideration. It's nice that she's found something she enjoys, but it's not exactly the kind of high-level strategic work that drives real business results. Her constant diminishment of my achievements was wearing me down, but I tried to focus on the positive feedback I was receiving from clients and colleagues. My boss at Bright Spark, Marcus Chen, frequently praised my ability to understand client needs and translate them into effective marketing strategies. "You have a gift for seeing what businesses really need rather than what they think they want," he told me during my performance review. That kind of insight is rare and valuable. Despite Marcus's encouragement, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe Carmen was right. Maybe I was settling for mediocre work instead of pursuing something more ambitious. Maybe I was wasting my potential on small-scale projects when I could be aiming higher. Her criticism had a way of warming into my brain and making me question every decision I made. The comparison became even more painful when Carmen received her first promotion at Henderson Global Solutions. After just 18 months with the company, she was elevated to senior consultant with a significant salary increase and even more prestigious client assignments. She celebrated by throwing a party at her apartment, inviting family, friends, and colleagues to toast her success. I attended the party reluctantly, feeling out of place among Carmen's accomplished friends and colleagues. Everyone seemed to be discussing deals worth millions of dollars, international business trips, and strategic initiatives that affected major corporations. When people asked what I did for work, I found myself minimizing my role at Bright Spark, describing it as just some marketing stuff for local businesses. The low point of the evening came when Carmen gathered everyone's attention to make a speech about her promotion. "I want to thank everyone who has supported me on this journey," she said, raising her champagne glass. "It's been an incredible experience working with such talented colleagues and challenging clients. I'm proof that hard work and dedication really do pay off in the business world." Then she looked directly at me and added, "I hope my success can inspire others in my family to aim higher and pursue more ambitious goals. Sometimes we need to see what's possible before we can push ourselves to achieve it." The implication was clear to everyone in the room. Carmen was the successful sister who had figured out how to make it in the business world, while I was the underachiever who needed inspiration to reach my potential. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as conversations resumed around me, and I spent the rest of the evening counting down the minutes until I could politely excuse myself and go home. That night, lying in my small apartment that suddenly felt shabby compared to Carmen's sleek downtown loft, I seriously considered whether she might be right about my career choices. Maybe I was being too comfortable in my role at Bright Spark. Maybe I should be pursuing opportunities at larger companies with more prestigious clients. Maybe I was letting fear of failure keep me from reaching for something bigger. The next morning, I called Dr. Kim, who had become an informal mentor since my community college days. I explained my doubts about my career path and my sister's criticism of my choices. Dr. Kim listened patiently before offering a perspective that would prove prophetic. "Elena," she said, "success isn't just about the size of the company you work for or the prestige of your clients. It's about finding work that leverages your unique strengths and creates meaningful impact. From what you've told me about your projects at Bright Spark, you're developing exactly the kind of experience that will serve you well throughout your career." She paused before adding, "Don't let other people's definitions of success distract you from building something authentic to your own talents and interests. The business world needs people who understand human psychology and can create genuine connections between brands and consumers. That's not a small skill set, Elena. It's a rare and valuable one." Dr. Kim's words helped me refocus on what I was actually accomplishing at Bright Spark, rather than what I wasn't achieving compared to Carmen. Over the following months, I threw myself into my work with renewed energy and purpose. I started paying closer attention to the business results my campaigns were generating for clients, tracking not just engagement metrics but actual revenue impacts and long-term customer relationship improvements. The results were consistently impressive. A local bakery I worked with saw a 30% increase in regular customers after implementing my community-focused social media strategy. A struggling yoga studio went from near bankruptcy to a 6-month waiting list for classes after I helped them reposition their brand around mental health and wellness rather than just physical fitness. A family-owned restaurant chain expanded from 3 to 7 locations following a storytelling campaign I developed that highlighted their commitment to authentic recipes and community involvement. Marcus began giving me more responsibility and autonomy in client relationships. Instead of just executing marketing strategies developed by senior team members, I was now leading client consultations and developing comprehensive campaigns from concept to implementation. The work was challenging and fulfilling in ways that went beyond traditional measures of professional success. Meanwhile, Carmen's career continued its upward trajectory. She was promoted again, this time to principal consultant, and began managing her own team of junior consultants. Her social media was filled with photos from business conferences, client dinners, and networking events. She had purchased a new car, upgraded to an even more expensive apartment, and started dating a fellow consultant who worked for a competing firm. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable as the gap between our lifestyles became more apparent. Carmen would arrive in designer clothes and expensive accessories, regaling everyone with stories of her latest high-profile projects. I would sit quietly, sharing minimal details about my work when asked directly, feeling increasingly invisible beside my sister's obvious success. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving dinner when I was 27. Carmen had just returned from a week-long business trip to New York, where she had been working with a major financial services company on a digital transformation initiative. She spent most of the meal describing the project, name-dropping executives she had worked with, and explaining how her recommendations would affect thousands of employees and millions of dollars in operational efficiency. When the conversation finally turned to me, Carmen's tone shifted to what I can only describe as patronizing concern. "Elena's still working at that little marketing agency," she explained to our cousin Miguel, who had asked about my job. "It's sweet that she's found something she enjoys, but I keep telling her she's selling herself short. With her education, she could be working for a real company instead of wasting her talents on these tiny local businesses." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was years of accumulated criticism, or maybe it was the dismissive way she referred to my work as sweet rather than valuable. But I found myself responding more forcefully than I ever had before. "The businesses I work with aren't tiny," I said, my voice sharper than usual. "They're small businesses that employ real people and serve real communities. The work I do helps them grow and succeed, which creates jobs and economic impact that affects families throughout Phoenix." Carmen's eyebrows rose in surprise at my pushback, but she quickly recovered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course your work has value, Elena. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I just think you could be doing something with more scope and influence if you set your sights higher. There's nothing wrong with being content with a small-scale career, but some of us are driven to achieve more significant impact." The word content hit me like a physical blow. Carmen was essentially calling me mediocre, suggesting that I lacked the ambition or ability to pursue anything meaningful. I felt the familiar shame wash over me, the same feeling I'd carried since childhood when teachers or family members implied that I wasn't trying hard enough or wasn't capable of real achievement. That Thanksgiving conversation became a turning point, though not in the way Carmen intended. Instead of motivating me to pursue a more traditional career path, her criticism crystallized my understanding of what I actually wanted to accomplish professionally. I didn't want to be a consultant who parachuted into companies for brief projects before moving on to the next assignment. I wanted to build something lasting, to work with organizations over time and see the long-term impact of strategic decisions. I started researching companies that aligned with my values and interests, looking for opportunities that would allow me to apply my marketing and psychology background to more substantial business challenges. That's when I discovered Henderson Global Solutions was hiring for a new position focused on organizational culture and employee engagement. The job description mentioned working with companies to improve internal communication, develop authentic brand identity, and create more meaningful connections between employees and corporate mission. Reading the job posting felt like discovering a role that had been designed specifically for my skill set. The position required someone who understood both marketing strategy and human psychology, someone who could analyze organizational dynamics and develop interventions that would improve both employee satisfaction and business performance. It was exactly the kind of work I had been doing at BrightSpark, but applied to larger-scale organizational challenges. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was considering applying to work at Carmen's company. Part of me worried about the potential complications of working alongside my sister, but a larger part of me was excited by the possibility of proving myself in the same environment where she had built a reputation. Maybe it was time to stop avoiding comparison and start embracing the opportunity to show what I could accomplish when given the chance. I spent weeks crafting my application, highlighting not just my traditional marketing experience, but also the organizational psychology insights I had developed through my work with diverse small business clients. I included case studies that demonstrated my ability to understand company culture, identify communication gaps, and develop strategies that improved both internal cohesion and external brand representation. The application process was rigorous, involving multiple rounds of interviews with different senior team members. Each conversation reinforced my belief that this role was exactly what I had been preparing for throughout my career, even when I didn't realize that's what I was doing. The interviewers were particularly interested in my approach to understanding organizational dynamics and my track record of developing strategies that created authentic connections between businesses and their stakeholders. 3 weeks after my final interview, I received a call from Jennifer Matthews, Henderson Global Solutions, Director of Human Resources. "Elena," she said, "we'd like to offer you the position of Senior Consultant for Organizational Culture and Engagement. Your background and approach to strategic communication make you an ideal fit for this role." The salary offer was substantially higher than what I was making at BrightSpark, and the benefits package included opportunities for professional development, conference attendance, and collaboration with some of the most respected business consultants in the region. More importantly, the work itself represented everything I had hoped for, in terms of meaningful, challenging projects that would allow me to apply my skills at a larger scale. I accepted the position immediately, giving Marcus and the team at BrightSpark 3 weeks' notice and promising to help train my replacement. Marcus was disappointed to lose me but excited about my opportunity. "You've been ready for something like this for a long time," he said. "Henderson Global is lucky to have you, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish there." I decided not to tell my family about the new job immediately. Part of me wanted to surprise them, and part of me wanted to establish myself in the role before facing Carmen's inevitable analysis of my career choices. I knew she would have opinions about my joining her company, and I wanted to be confident in my own position before dealing with her perspective on the situation. My first day at Henderson Global Solutions was both exciting and nerve-wracking. The office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Phoenix and conference rooms named after major business theories. The company culture was professional but collaborative, with consultants from different practice areas working together on complex client challenges. Jennifer Matthews introduced me to my immediate supervisor, David Park, who would be overseeing my integration into the company and my first client assignments. David had 15 years of experience in organizational consulting and had specifically requested someone with my background for his team. "We've been looking for someone who understands both the marketing and psychology sides of organizational culture," he explained. "Your experience with small businesses gives you insights into authentic relationship building that a lot of traditional consultants lack." My first project was with Phoenix Children's Hospital, which was struggling with employee turnover and declining patient satisfaction scores. The hospital administration knew the problems were connected, but couldn't identify the root causes or develop effective interventions. My job was to analyze the organizational culture, identify communication breakdowns, and recommend strategies for improving both employee engagement and patient experience. The project was exactly the kind of challenge I had been hoping for. It required everything I had learned about understanding human motivation, analyzing communication patterns, and developing strategies that addressed both emotional and practical needs. I spent weeks interviewing employees at all levels of the hospital hierarchy, from senior administrators to frontline nursing staff, to housekeeping and food service workers. What I discovered was a classic case of mission drift. Phoenix Children's Hospital had been founded with a clear commitment to providing compassionate, family-centered care, but years of budget pressures and efficiency initiatives had gradually shifted the focus toward metrics and productivity. Employees still believed in the original mission, but they felt increasingly disconnected from it in their daily work experience. The patient satisfaction issues stemmed directly from this cultural disconnect. When employees felt like cogs in a machine rather than healthcare professionals making a difference in children's lives, that emotional distance was transmitted to patients and families. The solution wasn't more training or better procedures, it was realigning the organizational culture with its founding values and helping employees reconnect with their sense of purpose. I developed a comprehensive strategy that included storytelling initiatives to highlight the hospital's impact on individual families, communication improvements to help employees understand how their roles contributed to patient outcomes, and recognition programs that celebrated examples of exceptional compassionate care. The recommendations were designed to improve both employee satisfaction and patient experience by creating more authentic connections between the hospital's mission and its daily operations. David Park was impressed with both my analysis and my recommendations. "This is exactly the kind of insight we were hoping to gain from your unique background," he told me after reviewing my initial report. "You've identified cultural issues that traditional consulting approaches often miss, and your proposed solutions address the human psychology behind organizational behavior rather than just surface-level symptoms." The hospital administrators were equally enthusiastic about implementing my recommendations. Within 6 months, employee satisfaction scores had improved significantly, turnover rates had decreased, and patient experience ratings were trending upward. More importantly, the hospital staff reported feeling more connected to their work and more confident in their ability to make a meaningful difference in patients' lives. News of the project's success spread quickly throughout Henderson Global Solutions. Other partners began requesting my involvement in their client engagements, particularly those involving organizational culture or employee engagement challenges. I found myself working with a diverse range of companies, from tech startups struggling with rapid growth to established manufacturing firms trying to adapt to changing market conditions. Each project reinforced my confidence that I had found the right career path. The work was challenging and meaningful, combining strategic thinking with deep understanding of human motivation and organizational dynamics. I was finally able to apply all the skills I had developed throughout my career in ways that created substantial business impact and personal fulfillment. The best part was that I was accomplishing all of this at the same company where Carmen had built her reputation. Every successful project was proof that I belonged in this environment, that I could contribute at the same level as the consultants who had always seemed so much more accomplished than me. I was no longer the underachieving sister trying to catch up. I was a valued team member making my own unique contributions to the firm's success. 6 months into my tenure at Henderson Global Solutions, I received an unexpected opportunity that would change everything. Jennifer Matthews asked me to join her for lunch to discuss my career development and future opportunities within the company. I assumed it would be a standard check-in conversation about my performance and professional goals. Instead, Jennifer had a proposal that left me speechless. "Elena," she said, "I want to talk to you about something confidential. Robert Henderson, our founder and CEO, has been planning his retirement for the past year. The board of directors has been conducting an extensive search for his replacement, looking for someone who understands both traditional consulting excellence and the future direction of organizational development." She paused, watching my expression carefully before continuing. "Your work over the past 6 months has been exceptional. More importantly, your approach to consulting represents exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need to lead this company into the next decade. The board would like to interview you for the CEO position." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what Jennifer had just said. 6 months ago, I had been working at a small marketing agency, constantly doubting my professional abilities and listening to my sister question my career choices. Now I was being considered to lead one of the most respected consulting firms in the Southwest, the same company where Carmen had built her reputation as a rising star. "I don't understand," I finally managed. "I've only been here 6 months. There are partners who have been with the company for years who would be more qualified for this role. Jennifer smiled. Traditional consulting experience is only one factor the board is considering. We're looking for someone who can lead Henderson Global Solutions into a new era of consulting that emphasizes authentic organizational transformation rather than just process optimization. Your background in psychology and marketing, combined with your track record of creating meaningful culture change, makes you an ideal candidate for this evolution. She explained that the business consulting industry was undergoing significant changes, with clients increasingly demanding solutions that addressed human and cultural factors rather than just technical or operational improvements. My approach to consulting, which integrated marketing psychology with organizational development, represented exactly the kind of innovative thinking that would differentiate Henderson Global Solutions in a competitive marketplace. The interview process would be extensive, involving presentations to the board of directors, detailed discussions of my vision for the company's future, and comprehensive evaluation of my leadership potential. Jennifer emphasized that I would be competing against several other candidates, including some with more traditional consulting backgrounds, but that the board was specifically interested in fresh perspectives on organizational development. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the interview process, developing a comprehensive vision for how Henderson Global Solutions could evolve to meet changing client needs while maintaining its reputation for excellence. My proposal focused on expanding the company's capabilities in areas like organizational culture, employee engagement, and authentic brand development, while continuing to deliver the strategic and operational consulting that had built the firm's reputation. The board interviews were challenging but exhilarating. I presented case studies from my work with Phoenix Children's Hospital and other clients, demonstrating how culture-focused consulting could deliver measurable business results. I outlined strategies for developing new service offerings that would position Henderson Global Solutions as a leader in the next generation of consulting practice. Most importantly, I articulated a vision for leadership that emphasized collaboration, innovation, and authentic connection with both employees and clients. The board members asked pointed questions about my management experience, my understanding of the consulting industry, and my plans for maintaining the company's competitive position while expanding into new areas of expertise. 3 weeks after my final interview, Jennifer called to schedule another lunch meeting. This time, she was accompanied by Robert Henderson himself, a distinguished gentleman in his early 60s, who had built the company from a small partnership into a regional consulting powerhouse. "Elena," he said, "the board has made their decision. We'd like to offer you the position of CEO of Henderson Global Solutions." The transition plan would take 3 months, during which I would work closely with Robert to understand all aspects of company operations and develop relationships with key clients and partners. My official start date as CEO would be the first Monday in June, exactly 1 year after I had left Brightspark Creative to join Henderson Global Solutions as a senior consultant. I accepted the position immediately, though the magnitude of the opportunity didn't fully hit me until I was driving home from the restaurant. In less than a year, I had gone from working at a small marketing agency to being named CEO of a major consulting firm. More importantly, I had proven to myself that all those years of self-doubt and criticism from my family had been based on other people's limited understanding of my capabilities, rather than any actual limitations in my potential. The hardest part of the transition was maintaining confidentiality about my promotion, while continuing to work alongside colleagues who had no idea about the upcoming change in leadership. I continued managing my client projects and participating in team meetings, all while working with Robert Henderson on strategic planning and leadership development behind the scenes. Carmen and I had minimal interaction during this period, since we worked in different practice areas and rarely collaborated on projects. The few times we encountered each other in the office, she maintained her usual slightly condescending tone when discussing my work, though she seemed surprised by the positive feedback I was receiving from partners and clients. "It sounds like you're settling in well at Henderson," she said during one brief conversation in the break room. "I'm glad you found something that suits your skill set. The organizational culture work you're doing seems like a good fit for your background in psychology." Her tone suggested that she still viewed my work as less rigorous or important than traditional consulting, but she was at least acknowledging that I had found a niche within the company. I simply nodded and thanked her for the feedback, knowing that in a few weeks the dynamics of our professional relationship would change dramatically. The announcement of my promotion was scheduled for a Monday morning all-hands meeting, where Robert Henderson would introduce me as his successor and outline the transition timeline. I arrived at the office early that morning, nervous but excited about finally sharing the news that I had been keeping secret for weeks. Carmen arrived at her usual time, stopping by the coffee station where I was preparing for what would be the most significant moment of my professional life. "Big meeting this morning," she said casually. "I wonder what Robert's announcement is about." "Probably some new client win or partnership announcement." I nodded non-committally, knowing that in less than an hour she would discover exactly what the announcement entailed. As employees gathered in the main conference room, I saw Carmen settle into a seat near the front, chatting with colleagues and clearly expecting a routine company update. Robert Henderson took the podium at exactly 9 o'clock, looking around the room with the kind of paternal pride that had characterized his leadership of the company for over 2 decades. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "I've asked you all here today to share some important news about the future of Henderson Global Solutions." He outlined his plans for retirement and his confidence in the company's continued success under new leadership. Then he gestured toward me, and I stood from my seat in the back of the room, making my way toward the front as he continued speaking. "It is my great pleasure to introduce Elena Vasquez as the new CEO of Henderson Global Solutions." Elena brings a unique combination of marketing expertise, organizational psychology insight, and innovative consulting approach that will lead this company into its next chapter of growth and excellence. The room erupted in applause as I reached the podium, but through the noise, I could clearly see Carmen's face. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, to something that looked like disbelief. She was staring at me as if she had never seen me before, trying to process the fact that her supposedly underachieving sister was being introduced as the leader of the company, where she had spent years building her own reputation. I stepped up to the microphone, looking out at my new colleagues and employees, many of whom were still processing the same surprise that had left Carmen speechless. "Thank you, Robert, and thank you all for this incredible opportunity," I began. "I'm honored to lead Henderson Global Solutions as we continue to innovate and excel in helping our clients achieve meaningful organizational transformation." As I spoke about my vision for the company and my excitement about working with such a talented team, I could see Carmen slowly recovering from her shock. Her face had settled into a carefully neutral expression, but I could tell she was struggling to reconcile this new reality with everything she thought she knew about my capabilities and career trajectory. After the meeting, colleagues approached to congratulate me and ask questions about the transition. Carmen remained in her seat for several minutes before finally approaching me, her expression unreadable. "Congratulations, Elena," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "This is certainly unexpected news." "Thank you," I replied simply, not elaborating on how long I had been preparing for this role or how the selection process had unfolded. She paused, clearly wanting to say more but uncertain how to navigate this new dynamic between us. Finally, she added, "I'm sure you'll do your best in the position." It wasn't exactly enthusiastic support, but it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I had ever received from Carmen that I might be capable of significant professional achievement. As she walked away, I realized that everything between us had fundamentally changed in the span of a single announcement. For the first time in our lives, I was no longer the sister who needed to prove herself worthy of Carmen's respect. I was her CEO. The weeks following my promotion announcement were unlike anything I had ever experienced professionally. Leading Henderson Global Solutions required me to step into responsibilities that went far beyond individual client work, encompassing strategic planning, team management, financial oversight, and external relationship building with clients, partners, and industry leaders. Robert Henderson had structured the transition period to ensure I would be fully prepared for the role, but the learning curve was steep and demanding. Every morning brought new challenges that required me to draw on skills I had developed throughout my career, while rapidly acquiring new competencies in areas like financial management, board relations, and corporate governance. The most immediate challenge was earning the respect and confidence of the senior partners who would be reporting to me. Many of these consultants had decades of experience in the industry and had been with Henderson Global Solutions longer than I had been working in consulting at all. Some were openly skeptical about my qualifications for the role, questioning whether someone with my background could effectively lead a firm built on traditional management consulting excellence. Sarah Williams, one of the most senior partners, was particularly direct in expressing her concerns during our first one-on-one meeting. "Elena," she said, "I want to be honest with you about something. A lot of us are wondering whether the board made the right decision in selecting someone with limited consulting experience for this role. We've built our reputation on delivering rigorous strategic analysis and operational improvements, and we're concerned about maintaining that standard under leadership that comes from a marketing background." Her feedback was difficult to hear, but I appreciated her directness more than the polite skepticism I sensed from other partners who were less willing to voice their concerns openly. "I understand your perspective, Sarah," I replied. "My background is different from traditional consulting preparation, but I believe that difference is exactly what Henderson Global Solutions needs to stay competitive in a changing marketplace." I outlined my vision for expanding the firm's capabilities while maintaining the analytical rigor and strategic focus that had built our reputation. The consulting industry was evolving, with clients increasingly seeking advisors who could address organizational culture, employee engagement, and authentic transformation, rather than just operational efficiency. My experience in understanding human psychology and organizational dynamics positioned me to lead this evolution, rather than just respond to it. Sarah listened thoughtfully before responding. "I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, but you'll need to prove that your approach can deliver the kind of results our clients expect. We can't afford to experiment with our reputation or our client relationships." That conversation set the tone for my first few months as CEO. I knew I was under intense scrutiny from both internal stakeholders and external clients, who were evaluating whether the leadership change would affect the quality of services they had come to expect from Henderson Global Solutions. Every decision I made, every client interaction I had, and every strategic initiative I launched was being analyzed as evidence of my capability to lead the firm effectively. I decided to address these concerns head-on by demonstrating results rather than just articulating vision. Working with David Park and other senior consultants, I identified several high-profile client engagements that would benefit from my integrated approach to consulting, combining traditional strategic analysis with organizational culture and employee engagement improvements. The first major test came with MedTech Innovations, a medical device manufacturer that was struggling with declining market share despite having superior products. Traditional consulting analysis had identified operational inefficiencies and competitive positioning challenges, but previous recommendations hadn't resulted in meaningful improvement. The client was frustrated and considering switching to a different consulting firm. I proposed a comprehensive engagement that would examine not just operational and strategic factors, but also organizational culture, employee motivation, and authentic brand positioning. My hypothesis was that MedTech's declining performance stemmed from internal disconnection between the company's innovative capabilities and its market-facing identity, resulting in mixed messages to both employees and customers. The analysis phase confirmed my suspicions. MedTech had exceptional research and development capabilities, with engineers and scientists who were genuinely passionate about developing technologies that could improve patient outcomes. However, the company's marketing and sales functions operated separately from R&D, resulting in product positioning that emphasized technical specifications rather than real-world benefits for healthcare providers and patients. More problematically, the disconnect between innovation and communication had created cultural silos within the organization. Research teams felt undervalued because their breakthrough discoveries weren't being translated into market success. Sales teams were frustrated because they didn't have compelling stories to tell about how MedTech products made a difference in healthcare settings. Marketing teams were caught in the middle, trying to create campaigns based on technical features rather than meaningful outcomes. My recommendations addressed these interconnected challenges through a comprehensive organizational transformation initiative. Instead of just restructuring operations or revising marketing strategies, I proposed creating cross-functional teams that would integrate technical innovation with market communication from the earliest stages of product development. The centerpiece of the strategy was a storytelling initiative that would help MedTech employees understand and communicate the real-world impact of their work. Rather than focusing on technical specifications, we developed case studies showing how specific devices had improved patient outcomes, reduced procedure times, or enhanced diagnostic accuracy in actual healthcare settings. Sarah Williams was assigned to work with me on the MedTech engagement, giving her first-hand exposure to my consulting approach. Initially, she was skeptical about the emphasis on organizational culture and storytelling, viewing these elements as secondary to more traditional strategic and operational improvements. "I understand the value of employee engagement," she said during one of our planning sessions, "but our client is paying for business results, not feel-good initiatives. We need to focus on factors that will directly impact their market position and financial performance." I explained how the cultural and communication issues were directly connected to MedTech's business challenges. When employees don't understand or feel connected to the value their work creates, it affects everything from innovation quality to customer relationship management. When sales teams can't articulate compelling value propositions, it impacts both new client acquisition and existing client retention. When marketing messages don't resonate with target audiences, it undermines the entire commercial strategy regardless of how well designed the operational improvements might be. The implementation phase of the MedTech engagement provided clear evidence of this integrated approach's effectiveness. Within 3 months of launching the cross-functional teams and storytelling initiatives, MedTech began seeing measurable improvements in both internal metrics and external performance indicators. Employee satisfaction scores increased significantly, particularly among R&D staff who reported feeling more connected to the commercial impact of their work. Sales performance improved as representatives gained access to compelling case studies and outcome data that helped them build stronger relationships with healthcare providers. Marketing campaigns generated higher engagement rates because messaging focused on meaningful benefits rather than technical features. Most importantly, these internal improvements translated into business results. MedTech secured 3 major new client contracts, renewed 2 relationships that had been at risk, and received industry recognition for innovative product development that effectively addressed real-world healthcare challenges. Sarah Williams was impressed by both the process and the outcomes. "I have to admit, Elena," she said after reviewing the 6-month results, "your approach delivered results that traditional consulting recommendations hadn't achieved. The integration of cultural and strategic factors created improvements that neither element could have accomplished independently." Her endorsement carried significant weight with other senior partners, many of whom had been waiting to see evidence of my consulting effectiveness before fully supporting my leadership. The MedTech success became a model for how Henderson Global Solutions could differentiate itself in the marketplace by offering more comprehensive organizational transformation rather than just strategic or operational consulting. Meanwhile, my relationship with Carmen had become increasingly complicated. We maintained professional courtesy when we encountered each other in the office, but the easy familiarity that had characterized our sibling dynamic, however dysfunctional, had been replaced by a formal distance that felt both necessary and sad. Carmen was clearly struggling to adjust to the new reality of our professional relationship. In meetings where we both participated, she seemed uncertain about how to interact with me, alternating between excessive deference that felt unnatural and attempts at casual familiarity that ignored the power dynamics of our respective positions. The situation became more challenging when Carmen's current project, a strategic planning engagement with a regional bank, began experiencing difficulties. The client was dissatisfied with the initial recommendations and had requested significant revisions to the proposed implementation timeline. Carmen's project team was struggling to address the client's concerns, and the engagement was at risk of being terminated. As CEO, I was ultimately responsible for all client relationships, including those managed by Carmen. David Park briefed me on the situation and recommended that I either personally intervene in the client relationship or assign additional senior resources to support Carmen's team. This put me in an impossible position. If I intervened directly, it would appear that I didn't trust Carmen's abilities and was micromanaging her work because of our family relationship. If I assigned other senior consultants to her project, it would signal to the entire firm that Carmen needed help, potentially undermining her professional reputation. If I did nothing and the engagement failed, it would reflect poorly on both Carmen and my leadership of the firm. I decided to handle the situation as I would with any other consultant facing client challenges. I scheduled a private meeting with Carmen to discuss the project's status and explore options for addressing the client's concerns. It was our first substantive professional conversation since my promotion, and the tension in the room was palpable. "Carmen," I began, David has briefed me on the situation with Mountain View Bank. I want to understand your perspective on what's happening with the engagement and how we can best support the client's success. Carmen's response was defensive, which wasn't unusual for consultants dealing with project difficulties, but her tone carried additional layers of complexity because of our personal history. The client keeps changing their requirements, she said. Every time we present recommendations, they add new criteria or shift their priorities. It's impossible to develop a coherent strategy when the target keeps moving. I listened carefully, asking questions about the client's feedback, the original scope of work, and the team's attempts to address evolving requirements. It became clear that the fundamental issue was a mismatch between what the client thought they needed and what they actually needed, a common consulting challenge that required careful relationship management and strategic flexibility. Here's what I think is happening, I said after reviewing the project details. Mountain View Bank asked for strategic planning assistance, but what they really need is organizational change management. They're trying to solve a strategic problem, but their real challenges are cultural and operational. That's why they keep changing requirements. They're sensing that traditional strategic planning isn't addressing their underlying issues. Carmen looked skeptical. They specifically requested strategic planning recommendations. That's what they're paying for. Sometimes clients ask for what they think they need rather than what they actually need, I replied. Our job is to help them achieve their goals, even if that means expanding or redirecting the scope of our engagement. I proposed a modified approach that would incorporate organizational culture assessment into the strategic planning process, helping Mountain View Bank understand how internal dynamics were affecting their ability to execute strategic initiatives. This would address the client's underlying concerns while maintaining the integrity of the original engagement. Carmen was reluctant to embrace this shift, partly because it represented an admission that her original approach hadn't been effective, and partly because it required consulting methods she wasn't comfortable with. I don't have experience with organizational culture analysis, she admitted. That's more your area of expertise. This was the crux of the dilemma. The project needed exactly the kind of integrated consulting approach that had become my specialty, but Carmen was the lead consultant on the engagement. Any direct involvement from me would raise questions about her capabilities and our family relationship. I made a decision that prioritized client success while attempting to protect Carmen's professional standing. I'll work with you behind the scenes to develop the culture assessment methodology, I said. You'll remain the primary client contact and present all recommendations. I'll provide support and guidance, but this will be your project and your success. Carmen's expression shifted as she processed this offer. She was clearly conflicted between professional pride and practical necessity. Are you sure that's appropriate? She asked. I mean, given our relationship and your position in the company? I'm the CEO, I replied. My job is to ensure that every client receives the best possible service from Henderson Global Solutions. If that means providing additional support to any consultant, including you, then that's what I'll do. Over the following 2 weeks, Carmen and I worked together to redesign the Mountain View Bank engagement. I helped her develop frameworks for assessing organizational culture and change readiness, while she maintained primary responsibility for client communication and recommendation development. It was the first time we had ever collaborated professionally, and despite the underlying tension, we discovered that our different strengths complemented each other effectively. Carmen's traditional consulting skills provided analytical rigor and strategic focus, while my organizational psychology background offered insights into human factors that affected strategy implementation. Together, we developed recommendations that addressed both the strategic planning requirements the client had requested and the cultural change management they actually needed. The revised presentation to Mountain View Bank was a success. The client was impressed by the comprehensive approach that connected strategic objectives with implementation realities, and they approved both the updated recommendations and an expanded scope of work for the implementation phase. Carmen received positive feedback from the client and recognition from other partners for her ability to adapt the engagement to meet evolving client needs. More importantly, the collaboration gave Carmen first-hand experience with my consulting approach, helping her understand how cultural analysis could enhance rather than replace traditional strategic methods. "I have to admit," she said after the client presentation, "incorporating the organizational factors made our recommendations much more robust. I can see how that kind of integration creates better outcomes for clients." Her acknowledgement felt like a small breakthrough in our professional relationship, though it didn't immediately translate into improvements in our personal dynamic. We had proven that we could work together effectively when necessary, but the fundamental tension between our family history and current professional positions remained unresolved. The success of the Mountain View Bank engagement had broader implications for Henderson Global Solutions. Other consultants began requesting training in organizational culture assessment and change management methodologies, recognizing that these capabilities could enhance their own client engagements. I started developing internal training programs that would help traditional strategy consultants integrate cultural factors into their recommendations. This internal capability building became a major strategic initiative for the firm, positioning Henderson Global Solutions as a leader in comprehensive organizational transformation rather than just traditional management consulting. We began marketing these integrated capabilities to prospective clients, emphasizing our ability to address both strategic and cultural factors that affected business performance. The market response was overwhelmingly positive. Clients were eager to work with consultants who understood that organizational success required both analytical rigor and human insight. Our pipeline of prospective engagements grew significantly, and we began attracting clients who had been frustrated with traditional consulting approaches that addressed only technical or operational factors. 6 months into my tenure as CEO, Henderson Global Solutions was performing better than it had in years. Revenue was up 28% compared to the same period the previous year. Client satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs, and employee engagement within the firm had improved significantly as consultants embraced more holistic approaches to their work. The success was gratifying professionally, but it also created new challenges in my relationship with my family. Carmen was thriving in her expanded role, having developed genuine expertise in organizational culture consulting and earned recognition as one of the firm's most versatile consultants. However, her success was now directly connected to methods and approaches I had introduced to the company. At family gatherings, the dynamic that had defined our relationship for decades had been completely reversed. Instead of Carmen regaling everyone with stories of her professional achievements while I sat quietly, relatives were now asking me about my role as CEO and expressing amazement at my rapid rise in the business world. "Elena is running that big consulting company now." My mother would tell neighbors and friends, the pride in her voice something I had never heard before. "She's the youngest CEO in the company's history, and they're doing better than ever under her leadership." Carmen's response to this shift was complex and painful to watch. She was genuinely proud of my success, I could tell, but she was also struggling with the loss of her position as the family's primary example of professional achievement. For the first time in her life, she was being defined in relation to my accomplishments, rather than the other way around. The situation came to a head during our parents' anniversary celebration, a family gathering where everyone was present, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. As usual, conversation turned to career updates and professional achievements, but this time the focus was primarily on my role at Henderson Global Solutions. Uncle Miguel asked about the company's growth, Aunt Rosa wanted to know about my management philosophy, and several cousins were curious about opportunities in the consulting industry. Carmen answered questions about her own work when asked, but it was clear that she was no longer the center of attention in discussions about professional success. The breaking point came when my father, Roberto, stood up to make a toast. "I want to say something about my daughters," he began, looking around the room. "For years, we thought Carmen was going to be our big success story in the business world. She worked so hard and achieved so much, and we were very proud." He paused, turning toward me. "But Elena has shown us that success comes in many forms and on many timelines. She found her own path, developed her own strengths, and achieved something none of us imagined was possible. I'm proud of both my daughters, but I want to acknowledge that I didn't always see Elena's potential when she was younger." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from my father for years of dismissive comments and unfavorable comparisons. More importantly, It was public recognition that I had proven myself worthy of respect and admiration, something I had been seeking my entire life. Carmen's reaction was immediate and painful to witness. She excused herself from the room, claiming she needed some air, and didn't return for the rest of the evening. I found her later sitting in her car in the driveway, tears streaming down her face. "Carmen," I said, approaching carefully, "are you okay?" She looked up at me with an expression of raw vulnerability I had never seen before. "I don't know how to handle this, Elena," she said. "My whole identity has been built around being the successful sister, the one who figured everything out first. I don't know who I am if I'm not that person anymore." Her honesty was heartbreaking and completely unexpected. For the first time, I saw that Carmen's constant criticism and dismissal of my achievements hadn't just been about maintaining her position of superiority. It had been about protecting an identity that was threatened by any evidence that I might be capable of success comparable to her own. "You're still successful," I said. "You're an excellent consultant, and you're developing new capabilities that are making you even better at your work. Your value doesn't decrease because mine has increased." Carmen shook her head. "You don't understand. I've spent my entire career being the daughter who made our parents proud, the sister who showed you what was possible, the consultant who proved that our family could compete at the highest levels. If you can do all of that better than I can, then what was the point of everything I accomplished?" I sat down beside her in the car, trying to find words that could address the pain she was expressing. "The point was that you paved the way," I said finally. "You showed our family that business success was possible. You proved to our parents that their daughters could achieve anything. You created an example that I could follow, even when I was taking a different path to get there." "But now you're ahead of me," she replied. "You're the CEO, you're the one getting recognition, you're the success story that everyone talks about. I'm just following your lead instead of setting my own course." Her perspective revealed how zero-sum her thinking about success had always been. In Carmen's worldview, achievement was relative, rather than absolute. My promotion to CEO didn't just represent my own success. It represented her failure to maintain her position of superiority within our family and professional sphere. "Carmen," I said, "success isn't a competition between us. There's room for both of us to achieve meaningful things in our careers. Your accomplishments don't become less valuable, because I've also accomplished something significant." She was quiet for a long time, processing what I had said. Finally, she asked, "How do you handle it? Being responsible for so much, having everyone's expectations focused on you?" It was the first time Carmen had ever asked me for advice about anything, and I could tell the question was difficult for her to voice. "Honestly," I replied, "it's terrifying most of the time. I constantly worry that I'm not qualified for the role, that I'll make decisions that hurt the company or the people who work there. But I've learned to trust that my different perspective and background give me insights that traditional approaches might miss." "I've been watching you at work," Carmen admitted. "The way you handle client relationships, the way you think about organizational problems. You see things that I miss, connections that I don't make. I used to think that meant you were overcomplicating simple business issues, but now I realize you're seeing factors that are actually crucial to success." Her acknowledgement was more meaningful than any award or recognition I could have received. Carmen had been the standard against which I had measured my own capabilities for my entire life. Having her recognize that my approach had value, that my perspective contributed something unique and important, felt like a fundamental validation of everything I had worked to accomplish. "I think we both have valuable strengths," I said. "You're incredibly disciplined and analytically rigorous. You understand strategic frameworks and operational systems in ways that take me much longer to grasp. I need people with your capabilities on my team." Carmen looked at me with surprise. "Are you offering me a promotion?" I laughed, realizing how my comment might have sounded. "I'm saying that I value your contributions to the firm, and I hope we can continue working together effectively despite the complications of our family relationship." She nodded slowly. "I think I'd like that," she said. "It's going to take some time for me to adjust to this new dynamic between us, but I want to try." As we sat together in the car, I reflected on how dramatically our relationship had evolved over the past year. We had gone from a dynamic where Carmen consistently dismissed my potential to one where she was acknowledging my capabilities and expressing interest in learning from my approach. It wasn't a complete resolution of decades of complicated family dynamics, but it was a beginning. The conversation with Carmen marked a turning point in both our professional and personal relationship. Over the following months, we began collaborating more frequently on client engagements, combining her strategic analysis capabilities with my organizational culture expertise to deliver more comprehensive solutions than either of us could have developed independently. Our joint engagements became some of the most successful projects in Henderson Global Solutions' portfolio. Clients appreciated having access to consultants who could address both technical business challenges and human organizational factors. Carmen and I developed a working rhythm that leveraged our different strengths while minimizing the friction that had historically characterized our interactions. More importantly, Carmen began to develop her own expertise in areas that went beyond traditional consulting. She enrolled in executive education programs focused on organizational psychology and change management, expanding her capabilities in directions that complemented rather than competed with my background. Instead of trying to maintain superiority in our original areas of comparison, she was creating new domains where she could excel independently. The evolution of our professional relationship had positive effects on our family dynamics as well. Holiday gatherings became less tense, with both of us contributing to conversations about our work without the underlying competition that had previously made these discussions uncomfortable. Our parents seemed relieved that their daughters were finally supporting rather than undermining each other's success. 1 year after my promotion to CEO, Henderson Global Solutions had achieved record-breaking performance across all key metrics. Revenue had increased by 42%, client retention was at an all-time high, and the firm had been recognized by industry publications as a leader in innovative consulting approaches. More importantly, employee satisfaction within the company had improved dramatically, as consultants embraced more integrated and holistic methods of serving clients. The success positioned Henderson Global Solutions for national expansion, with opportunities to open offices in other major markets and compete for larger-scale engagements with Fortune 500 companies. The board of directors was enthusiastic about these growth prospects and confident in my ability to lead the firm through its next phase of development. As I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point, I realized that my success hadn't come from trying to emulate Carmen's approach or prove myself according to her standards. Instead, it had come from embracing my own unique combination of skills and perspectives, developing capabilities that complemented rather than competed with traditional consulting methods. The girl who had once been dismissed as inadequate and dramatic had become a business leader whose insights were sought by major corporations and respected by industry peers. More importantly, I had learned to trust my own judgment and value my own contributions, regardless of how others might evaluate my worth. Carmen and I still had work to do in fully resolving our complicated history, but we had established a foundation for a healthier relationship based on mutual respect rather than competitive comparison. She was building her own reputation and expertise in areas that reflected her interests and strengths, while I was leading Henderson Global Solutions toward a future that leveraged both traditional consulting excellence and innovative approaches to organizational transformation. The transformation wasn't complete, and there would undoubtedly be new challenges ahead. But for the first time in my life, I felt confident in my ability to handle whatever obstacles might arise, secure in the knowledge that my perspective and capabilities were valuable exactly as they were. 2 years into my role as CEO, Henderson Global Solutions faced its biggest challenge yet. A major competitor, Blackstone Strategic Partners, had begun aggressively pursuing our key clients with promises of lower fees and faster turnaround times. 3 of our most valuable long-term relationships were considering switching firms, and industry analysts were questioning whether our premium pricing model could survive in an increasingly cost-conscious marketplace. The situation required decisive leadership and strategic innovation that would differentiate Henderson Global Solutions in ways that went beyond price competition. I convened an emergency leadership team meeting that included all senior partners, including Carmen, to develop a comprehensive response strategy. During the meeting, Sarah Williams presented market intelligence about Blackstone's approach. "They're essentially commoditizing consulting services," she explained. "They're promising clients that strategic analysis and operational improvements can be delivered faster and cheaper through standardized methodologies and junior consultant teams." Carmen raised a critical concern. If clients start viewing consulting as a commodity service, we'll be forced to compete on price rather than value. That could destroy our business model and force us to compromise the quality that has built our reputation. I listened to various perspectives from the leadership team before presenting my analysis of the situation. Blackstone is making a fundamental miscalculation, I said. They're assuming that business transformation can be standardized and commoditized. But our experience with clients like MedTech Innovations and Mountain View Bank has shown that the most valuable consulting work addresses unique organizational challenges that require customized solutions. I proposed a bold counter-strategy that would position Henderson Global Solutions as the premier firm for comprehensive organizational transformation rather than traditional management consulting. Instead of competing on price or speed, we would emphasize our ability to deliver sustainable change that addressed both strategic and cultural factors affecting business performance. The centerpiece of this strategy was the development of what I called the integrated transformation methodology, a proprietary approach that combined strategic analysis, operational improvement, and organizational culture development into seamless engagements. This methodology would leverage the diverse capabilities we had been building across the firm, creating service offerings that competitors couldn't easily replicate. Carmen was instrumental in developing the operational components of this methodology, drawing on her traditional consulting expertise to ensure that our integrated approach maintained the analytical rigor that clients expected. Her contribution was essential to making the methodology credible to clients who might be skeptical about expanding beyond conventional strategic consulting. We spent 3 months developing comprehensive case studies, training materials, and marketing strategies that would introduce the integrated transformation methodology to existing and prospective clients. The launch campaign emphasized real business results that our holistic approach had achieved, demonstrating measurable improvements in both financial performance and organizational effectiveness. The market response exceeded our expectations. Rather than losing clients to Blackstone's lower-cost approach, we began attracting organizations that had been frustrated with superficial consulting engagements that failed to create lasting change. Companies that had worked with multiple consulting firms without achieving meaningful transformation were eager to explore our integrated methodology. Phoenix Technology Group became our showcase client for the new approach. This software development company had engaged 4 different consulting firms over 5 years, implementing various strategic and operational recommendations without achieving sustainable improvement in either financial performance or employee satisfaction. They were on the verge of abandoning external consulting altogether when they agreed to pilot our integrated transformation methodology. Carmen and I led the Phoenix Technology engagement together, demonstrating how strategic analysis and cultural transformation could be seamlessly integrated throughout the consulting process. The project required us to work more closely than we ever had before, combining our different expertise areas into a unified approach that addressed all aspects of organizational performance. The engagement revealed that Phoenix Technology's core challenge wasn't strategic positioning or operational efficiency. Instead, their repeated consulting failures had created a culture of cynicism and resistance to change that undermined any improvement initiative regardless of its technical merit. Employees had learned to implement recommended changes superficially while maintaining underlying behaviors and attitudes that prevented sustainable transformation. Our integrated approach addressed this cultural resistance while simultaneously implementing strategic and operational improvements. Carmen led the analytical components of the engagement, developing recommendations for product development, market positioning, and operational optimization. I focused on the cultural transformation elements, working with Phoenix Technology employees to understand and address the underlying factors that had prevented previous consulting recommendations from taking root. The breakthrough came when we discovered that Phoenix Technology's employees were passionate about their company's mission to develop software that helped small businesses succeed, but they felt disconnected from the impact their work was creating in the marketplace. Previous consulting engagements had focused on internal efficiency and competitive positioning without addressing this fundamental disconnect between employee motivation and business purpose. We developed a comprehensive communication and engagement strategy that helped Phoenix Technology employees understand and connect with the real-world impact of their software development work. This included customer success storytelling, direct interaction between development teams and end users, and recognition programs that celebrated specific examples of how Phoenix Technology Solutions had helped small businesses achieve their goals. The cultural transformation created foundation for implementing strategic and operational changes that had been recommended by previous consultants but never successfully adopted. When employees understood and felt connected to the business purpose behind recommended changes, they embraced rather than resisted implementation efforts. 6 months after launching the integrated engagement, Phoenix Technology had achieved measurable improvements across all key performance indicators. Revenue had increased by 35%, employee satisfaction scores had reached company highs, customer retention had improved significantly, and the company had successfully launched 2 new product lines that directly addressed small business needs identified through the cultural engagement process. More importantly, Phoenix Technology's leadership team reported that changes implemented through our integrated methodology felt sustainable in ways that previous consulting recommendations had not. Employees were maintaining new behaviors and attitudes because they understood and believed in the underlying business rationale, rather than simply complying with mandated changes. The success of the Phoenix Technology engagement established the integrated transformation methodology as a legitimate alternative to traditional consulting approaches. Industry publications began featuring Henderson Global Solutions as an innovative firm that was pioneering new methods for creating lasting organizational change. This recognition attracted attention from much larger clients than we had previously served. Fortune 500 companies that had been frustrated with conventional consulting results began inquiring about our integrated approach. The business development pipeline expanded dramatically, with opportunities for engagements that could significantly scale our operations and national presence. Carmen's role in developing and implementing the methodology had established her as one of the firm's most valuable consultants. Her ability to maintain analytical rigor while incorporating cultural factors had become a crucial capability that differentiated our services from both traditional strategic consulting and organizational development approaches. During our annual performance reviews, Carmen expressed appreciation for how our professional collaboration had expanded her consulting capabilities. "Working with you on these integrated engagements has made me a much more effective consultant," she said. "I used to think that focusing on cultural factors was soft and unrigorous, but I've learned that ignoring human dynamics actually makes strategic recommendations less reliable and harder to implement successfully." Her acknowledgement represented a fundamental shift in how she viewed my contribution to the firm and the consulting profession. Carmen was no longer tolerating my involvement in her projects. She was actively seeking opportunities to collaborate because she recognized that our combined approach delivered better results than either of us could achieve independently. This professional partnership had positive effects on our family relationships as well. During holiday gatherings, Carmen and I would discuss current client challenges and share insights about consulting approaches without the competitive tension that had previously characterized our interactions. Our parents observed these conversations with obvious relief and pride, seeing their daughters finally supporting, rather than undermining each other's success. The transformation in our relationship became particularly evident during my mother's birthday celebration. As family members shared updates about their professional and personal lives, Carmen volunteered to talk about our recent collaboration on a major client engagement. "Elena and I have been working together on some really exciting projects," she said, addressing the gathered relatives. Her approach to understanding organizational culture has completely changed how I think about consulting. We've been able to help clients achieve results that neither of us could have accomplished working separately. It was the first time Carmen had ever publicly acknowledged my professional capabilities as valuable and complementary to her own, rather than inferior or different. More significantly, she was expressing genuine enthusiasm about our collaboration rather than grudging acceptance of working together. My father, Roberto, seemed particularly moved by this display of mutual support between his daughters. Later in the evening, he pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Elena," he said, "I owe you an apology for how I treated you when you were younger. I spent so many years comparing you unfavorably to Carmen because I didn't understand that you were developing different kinds of strengths." He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. "Watching you and Carmen work together now, seeing how your different capabilities complement each other, I realized that I was wrong to assume that success had to look the same for both of my daughters. You found your own path and achieved something remarkable, and I should have supported that journey instead of questioning it. His apology was more meaningful than any professional recognition I had received. For decades, I had carried the weight of feeling like a disappointment to my family, like someone who couldn't measure up to expectations or achieve anything worthy of respect. Having my father acknowledge that his expectations had been limited, rather than my capabilities being insufficient, felt like a profound healing. 3 years into my tenure as CEO, Henderson Global Solutions had become the fastest-growing consulting firm in the Southwest region. Our integrated transformation methodology had generated industry-wide interest, with consulting competitors attempting to develop similar approaches and business schools incorporating our case studies into organizational development curricula. The success positioned us for a major expansion opportunity. A prestigious consulting firm in Chicago had approached us about a potential merger that would create one of the largest organizational transformation practices in the country. The deal would require significant changes to our operations and culture, but it could establish Henderson Global Solutions as a national leader in innovative consulting approaches. Carmen was promoted to managing director as part of the expansion planning, giving her responsibility for overseeing client relationships and service delivery across multiple office locations. Her role would involve significant travel and client interaction, representing Henderson Global Solutions at industry conferences and business development events. The promotion represented a major career milestone for Carmen, establishing her as one of the most senior consultants in our expanded organization. More importantly, her advancement was based on her expertise in integrated consulting methodologies rather than traditional strategic analysis, demonstrating how much her professional capabilities had evolved through our collaboration. During the announcement of Carmen's promotion, I reflected on how dramatically our professional relationship had changed since my initial appointment as CEO. We had gone from siblings with a complicated competitive dynamic to genuine business partners who leveraged our different strengths to achieve results that neither of us could accomplish independently. The merger negotiations proceeded smoothly, with both firms recognizing the value of combining Henderson Global Solutions' innovative methodology with the Chicago firm's national client relationships and operational scale. The deal was structured to preserve our organizational culture and consulting approach, while providing resources for significant expansion. 6 months later, Henderson Global Solutions officially became Henderson Transformation Partners, with offices in Phoenix, Chicago, Denver, and Atlanta. I was named CEO of the expanded organization, while Carmen became Regional Managing Director for the Western operations. Our integrated transformation methodology became the cornerstone service offering for all office locations. The expansion required both of us to take on responsibilities that went far beyond our previous experience. I was now leading an organization with over 200 employees and client relationships, spanning multiple industries and geographic regions. Carmen was managing consultant teams across 4 cities and overseeing some of the largest client engagements in the firm's history. Despite the increased demands and complexity, our working relationship continued to strengthen. We had developed communication patterns and decision-making processes that allowed us to collaborate effectively, even when managing different aspects of the business from different locations. The success of Henderson Transformation Partners attracted national media attention, with business publications featuring our story as an example of how innovative consulting approaches could create sustainable competitive advantages. Industry analysts identified our integrated methodology as a significant trend that was influencing how other firms approached organizational change consulting. During a conference presentation about our expansion, Carmen and I were interviewed together about the evolution of our business partnership. The interviewer asked how we had managed to work together effectively given our family relationship and the potential complications that could arise from mixing professional and personal dynamics. Carmen answered first. Elena and I learned that our different backgrounds and perspectives make us stronger consultants when we work together than either of us could be independently. Instead of competing with each other, we focus on how our unique capabilities can create better outcomes for clients. I added, the key was recognizing that success isn't a zero-sum game. Carmen's achievements don't diminish my accomplishments, and my success doesn't reduce her value. We both contribute important elements to our firm's capabilities, and we've learned to appreciate rather than feel threatened by our differences. The interviewer noted that our professional partnership seemed to contradict conventional wisdom about family members working together in business settings. Carmen and I both acknowledged that our collaboration hadn't always been smooth, but that we had developed mutual respect through working toward shared goals, rather than competing for individual recognition. As Henderson Transformation Partners continued to grow and evolve, I often reflected on the journey that had brought me from community college marketing student to CEO of a nationally recognized consulting firm. The path had been unexpected and sometimes difficult, but it had taught me invaluable lessons about trusting my own capabilities and developing authentic professional relationships. The girl who had once been dismissed as inadequate and lacking ambition had become a business leader whose insights were sought by major corporations and respected by industry peers. More importantly, I had learned to value my own contributions and trust my own judgment, regardless of how others might evaluate my worth. Carmen and I had transformed our relationship from competitive siblings to collaborative business partners, demonstrating that even complicated family dynamics could evolve into sources of mutual support and shared success. Our story had become an example for other family businesses and sibling partnerships about how different strengths could complement rather than compete with each other. The success of Henderson Transformation Partners represented more than just professional achievement. It symbolized the power of perseverance, authentic self-development, and the importance of creating space for different kinds of excellence to flourish. Carmen and I had both found ways to contribute meaningfully to our shared enterprise, while honoring our individual strengths and interests. Looking toward the future, I felt confident that Henderson Transformation Partners would continue to innovate and grow, helping organizations achieve sustainable transformation through integrated approaches that addressed both strategic and cultural factors. The methodology we had pioneered was already influencing how other consulting firms approached organizational change, and I anticipated that our integrated approach would become the standard for comprehensive business transformation. Most importantly, Carmen and I had established a foundation for continued collaboration that honored both our professional capabilities and our family relationship. We had learned to support each other's success rather than feeling threatened by it, creating a partnership that strengthened both our individual achievements and our shared enterprise. The journey from dismissed younger sister to respected CEO had taught me that authentic success comes from developing and trusting your own unique combination of capabilities, rather than trying to measure up to someone else's definition of achievement. Carmen had learned similar lessons about finding her own path to excellence rather than simply maintaining superiority in predetermined areas of comparison. Together, we had created something neither of us could have accomplished independently: a thriving business that leveraged our different strengths to deliver exceptional value to clients while building sustainable competitive advantages in an evolving marketplace. Our story demonstrated that even the most complicated family dynamics could be transformed into sources of mutual support and shared achievement when both parties committed to growth, understanding, and authentic collaboration. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.